All right, welcome to this explainer. Today we're cutting right through the vendor hype to give you a pragmatic, totally data-backed reality check on AI deployment risks. Look, if you're an executive managing AI integration right now in 2026, you've probably noticed a pretty massive disconnect. There's this huge gap between the miraculous stuff you see in vendor presentations and the messy, friction-heavy reality your engineering teams are actually dealing with on the ground. So let's unpack exactly why that's happening.
Here's a quick look at our agenda. We're going to cover the gap between demos and deployment, uncover those hidden subscription costs, talk about how to catch silent model regressions, and then finally, lay out how you can build a rock-solid verification framework.
Okay, part 1. The demo versus deployment gap, marketing versus reality. We really have to start by confronting the stark difference between what AI tools can pull off in a polished pitch and what actually happens when they hit your complex production workflows.
Think about the last vendor showcase you watched. You're seeing a highly controlled environment, right? The inputs are completely rehearsed, edge cases are scrubbed away, and the task completion rates look unbelievable, usually sitting way up there above 95%. But as you'll see, production reality paints a very different and, honestly, much messier picture for corporate deployments.
Just look at the May 2026 Valse AI benchmark. Frontier models hit just over 64% completion on realistic finance tasks. That means roughly 1 in 3 agent runs is spitting out unusable output. Think about that for a second. In a production finance environment, an AI generating incomplete or hallucinated outputs a third of the time? That's not a minor glitch. That's a massive workflow bottleneck. You simply cannot build a fully autonomous enterprise workflow on those kinds of numbers.
The thing you need to understand is that this capability gap is structural. Out in the wild, your models are hitting the messy, unpredictable long tail of user inputs and edge cases that literally don't exist in a shiny marketing video. Because of this real-world friction, you absolutely have to proactively discount vendor benchmarks by, say, 30 to 40% when you're projecting your own ROI. AI is an incredible augmentation tool for sure, but this friction keeps it from being some magic plug-and-play autonomous replacement.
Which brings us to Section 2, uncovering hidden subscription costs, the unit economics illusion. Because, well, this structural friction doesn't just slow down your workflows. It hits your budget hard.
So, AI tools are heavily marketed as predictable SaaS subscriptions, right? But the user data proves they operate a lot more like highly volatile spot markets. Take this Anthropic GitHub issue from March 2026. Users were documenting widespread, incredibly rapid drains on their usage limits. We're talking 5-hour session windows completely depleting in just 19 minutes because of unannounced peak-hour throttling and silent caching bugs.
The reality is, vendors are still trying to figure out their own pricing models, and they are facing immense compute constraints. This means the actual value of your subscription can just plummet overnight. Look at Cursor back in June 2025. Users woke up, and their effective request counts were slashed by more than half, but they were still paying the exact same $20 monthly fee. Vendors are constantly passing their capacity constraints directly onto you without much warning, which totally destroys any predictability in your overhead.
To protect your unit economics, you have to completely ditch this illusion of fixed cost reliability. It is absolutely crucial to treat AI subscriptions as variable cost relationships. If your enterprise is modeling ROI based purely on the nominal subscription cost, you're walking straight into a budget shortfall. You really need to budget for 1.5 to 2 times the stated cost and aggressively build in 30 to 50% headroom against those advertised limits just to absorb these unpredictable vendor changes.
Moving on to part 3, detecting silent model regressions. Because beyond the visible costs, there is a hidden technical friction that can absolutely wreck stable engineering workflows without any warning at all.
You know, in traditional software, version 4.6 in January is the exact same version 4.6 in March. But in the world of large language models, total myth. Model behavior is entirely non-stationary. Vendors are automatically routing queries, deploying quantization changes, and tweaking parameters under the hood to manage compute loads. All of this means the rock-solid AI you deployed in January can silently degrade by March, and you wouldn't even know it.
The data here is honestly pretty shocking. Telemetry from an AMD senior director who tracked nearly 7,000 sessions showed a massive 73% collapse in a model's thinking length in just 2 months. Over 3 months, tracking over 230,000 tool calls on the exact same workload, the model went from writing 2,200 characters of quote-unquote thinking down to just 600. It effectively became dumber overnight just to save the vendor on compute power.
And the downstream effects of this? Catastrophic for workflows. Because the AI was reading fewer files and thinking less, routine tasks suddenly required up to 80 times more retries. And you know how it goes. A single misunderstanding of project structure by a coding agent cascades instantly. It lacks context, forcing developers into hard Git resets. So your autonomous coding agents end up actively destroying production code instead of writing it.
So ask yourself, if your production model silently degraded by 73% today, would your team actually know? Vendor status pages are going to stay completely green during these collapses because they're only reporting on API uptime, not actual user experience or capability degradation. Without internal telemetry measuring your output quality, your only warning sign is going to be cascading failures hitting your production environment.
All right, let's get into Section 4, Building Your Verification Framework, the Executive Playbook. Knowing all these structural frictions exist, we need to implement concrete solutions that actually protect your enterprise.
So here is your 4-step mitigation playbook. This is your ultimate defense to shift from blind trust to a controlled deployment lifecycle. First, you need to deliberately pin specific dated model versions via the API so you don't get forced into auto-routing. Second, aggressively run internal team monitoring telemetry. You have to track your own quality metrics. Third, mandate human-in-the-loop verification on all outputs. And fourth, implement incredibly strict version control and rollback disciplines so you catch these regressions early.
The data is crystal clear on this. Fully autonomous replacement requires a level of reliability that 2026 AI tools simply do not have yet. Current AI is an amazingly powerful augmentation tool, but the idea that you can just fire your junior staff and let an agent run completely autonomously, that's a vendor fantasy. The 64% benchmark success rates and those cascading retry arrows prove that keeping a human in the loop is absolutely vital to absorbing and verifying all this structural friction.
Ultimately, pragmatic, data-driven discipline is what's going to separate a successful enterprise AI integration from a chaotic, budget-draining disaster. When you actually factor in the deployment gap, the variable costs, and the absolute necessity of internal telemetry, your deployment roadmap is undoubtedly going to be slower than the hype suggests. But it will be durable. You'll actually capture real ROI rather than just burning capital on broken workflows.
So take a hard look at your internal metrics. Are you staking your enterprise's future on curated vendor promises or on verified production telemetry? The executives who actually succeed in this landscape are the ones who treat AI as a powerful but highly volatile utility. Demand verification, expect friction, and budget for reality. Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer. Start building that internal telemetry today and take back control of your enterprise's AI destiny.